Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, we are from Group 4. We are here today to talk you about Chapter 6, Reader, Audience, and Popular Fiction. I'm Adinda Delima Dara, and my partners Fiihinna Adisty Rachma, Laillia Ajeaning and Muhammad Marhaban Ramadan. Our aim here is just to get some background information about Chapter 6. We plan brief about 16 minutes of your times. Therefore, we have divided this presentation into 5 sections. First, we will give you an introduction of Chapter 6. These parts will be explained by Adinda. Second, we will tell you about reader response theory or aesthetic theory. These parts will be explained by Fiihinna. Third, we will tell you about reception theory. These parts will be explained by Laillia. Fourth, we will tell you about psychoanalytic theory and popular fiction research. These parts will be explained by Marhaban. Then, in the last of our presentation, we will conclude the discussion. These parts will be explained by Adinda. After the presentation and the discussion Q&A have finished, you must to answer the quiz in the link. So, please pay attention to this presentation. Okay, I'm Adinda. I will explain about introduction of chapter 6. So in this chapter, we will discuss about popular fiction, which have two elements that will influence the literary works. There are the reader and audience elements that can make a literary criticism. Reader, audience, and popular fiction. Literary criticism has been existed for 200 years, but there are some students and literary academics who are not familiar with how to criticize it because of modern literary criticism in reader and audience was between in 1960 and 1970. Okay, the figures of literary criticism. First, Norman Holland. He was known as a major scholar of literary theory, primarily for having been one of the pioneers of reader response theory. Then, one of his literary works is the dynamic of literary response. Second, Wolfgang Isel. He is known of his reader response criticism in literary theory. Then he is considered to be founder of constant school of reception theory with Hans Robert Jauss. Then one of his literary works is The Act of Reading. Third, Hans Robert Jauss. He was a German academic, notable for his work in reception literary theory. Then, one of his literary works is Toward an Aesthetic of Reception. From literary criticism in popular fiction, we can see from the readers and audiences aspects. First, The readers and audiences are used as an element to form meaning. Second, the readers and audiences are studied as a parameter in popular fiction. Third, the readers and audiences are criticized as an element that interfere with the impact of popular fiction. Therefore, the readers and the audience's aspects are same, but the different things between them, they are the function and the practice research. Okay, why are the readers and audiences including the same aspects? Because they are as a reference. Reference from what? We can see from three things. First, changes references. They become references to events that are revealed in popular fiction. Second, cultural references. They become cultural references that expressed in fiction. Third, public. They become an indicator of acceptance in the society. Research practice can focus on the experience and psychological from the readers and the audiences that divide into two areas of studies. First, literary context, which focuses on study literary texts. Second, the social or cultural context the that focus on the impact and reflection. So, based from two studies, we will know the knowledgement in popular fiction that will be presented by Fiihinna, Laillia, and Marhaban.
Hello, I'm Vina Adisty will explains reader response or aesthetic response theory. This is different from the theory of formalism and new criticism, which deny the role of the readers and the remaining of literary works. Reader response theory shows the reader is an active element communicating the reality of literary works, or in other words, that the reader completes the meaning through interpretation. According to Stanley Fisk in his book, the reader's activities are the center of attention, where they are regarded not as leaning to meaning, but having meaning. He put this forward because there is no stable basis for meaning. In literature, there is no right or wrong. Therefore, meaning does not exist because there is a series of meaning already had. But the meaning exists because of the reader. Same with the case of reader response theory. Aesthetic response theory is the aesthetic value of the text, not in the text itself, but in the process of being read by the reader. According to Iser in his book, The Act of Reading, reading is an activity that is guided by the text. This must be processed by the reader, who is then in turn affected by what he has processed. Understanding the aesthetic response theory is a way of describing the reading process as a dynamic interaction between text and readers. So, examining the text with a psychological, social, and historical approach is still the interpretation of the reading process. Literary works has two poles, which we might call the artistic and the aesthetic. The artistic pole is the author text, and the aesthetic is the realization accomplished by the reader. In this way, a literary work is not identical with the text or concretization, but a literary work is between the two poles. According to Iser, the text has no meaning, and the text cannot present the reader, and it will be only concrete if there is a dynamic interaction process with the reader.
Okay, I'll explain to you about the reception theories. According to Kohler, among text research, text can be studied by examining the function or role of literature in society or social awareness, developing literary history as an institution, exploring the historical relationship between literature and other literary forms, understand the role and effects of fictional discourse psychologically, provide types of fiction and theory of relationships, both mimesis and non-mimesis, between literature and other factors that indicate the reader's subjective experience. From Kohler's explanation, it can be concluded that the study of the reception can include things like the ones mentioned above. Next, theories relate to the study of the reception. The first one is sociological studies. In sociological studies, they are about taste and culture, how to explain whether a group of people can like or not a product of popular culture. And then the second is anthropology and ethnography. Claude Lévi-Strauss, Clifford Geertz, and Mary Douglas in anthropology and ethnography who research with structuralist and semiotic methods. These methods provide assumptions about the communication model that show the participation of community members in constructing cultural meanings. And the third is linguistic context. In the context of linguistics, there are experts willing to analyze with the level of the reader's understanding. Although in this development, it is more sociological and psychological, which results in a reading analysis model. And the next slide is the object of the reception study. First one is to examine the history of the interaction between the reader and the text. And the second is to examine the history of the interaction between the audience and the film. The study of the reception can be said to deny research into the production of literary works, because this theory implies that art is produced by the reader or the audience. This study doesn't intend to construct a general and systematic explanation of the way a person understands the text, nor is it the interpretation of the text. Jonathan Kohler gives characteristics about research in the context of this reception. Is not a way of interpreting works, but an attempt to understand their changing intelligibility by identifying codes and interpretative assumptions that give the meaning for different audiences at different periods. A theory of response has its roots in the text. A theory of reception arises from a history of readers' judgment. From Iser's statement, it can be seen that the reception, theory, and aesthetic response or reader-oriented are different. So, the reader's judgment can include first, whether the reader is happy or not, second, the impact it has on the reader, and the third, the background and the affects the reader's judgment. Thus, research is not on the meaning of the text, but on the impact of the text. This is what underlies the reception theories. Many factors determine someone to read a popular novel. In this case, Keynes said that the educational background and the activity background of popular fiction readers can determine a person's choice of reading a novel. In this case, Keynes said that the educational background of the readers can determine what kind of novel they will read. Highly educated readers enjoy reading a novel that is full of challenges or suspense.
Today, I'm going to present to you about psychoanalysis theory and popular fiction research. Now, what is psychoanalysis? Psychoanalysis is, in a literary context, can be defined as a method or multiple methods used in literary research, which are divided into 5 different approaches. First, it is used to explain literary relationships, actions, motives, and existence in the text. This is also the method that most psychoanalysts have developed. Second, as an aesthetic discourse in a literally narrative structure. This approach is applied in a semiotic discourse within the context of language. Third, it is used in the narrative analysis itself. That is, analyzing stories with psychiatric disorders or focuses on the psychological aspects of the characters within the story. Fourth, it is used as an approach in the context of historical, ideological, and cultural research. Fifth, it is used in a study or research of the creative process of literature. It is the most often used within popular fiction research. Now, psychoanalysis in general are divided into multiple theories, but in the context of this presentation, or in this particular part, I will divide psychoanalysis into 2 different schools of thought: Freudian theory by Sigmund Freud and Lacanian theory by Jacques Lacan, both of which have their own theories in how psychoanalysis are to be used within a popular fiction research. Now, Freudian theory can be summed up into 4 points, which I have. One of them is desires, dreams, and wants. Now, Freud states that works of literature are but the reflections of the author's neuroses, which is filled with hidden desires of the author, which manifested in his work. The other point is unconscious fulfillment. Readers reading any piece of popular literature or any sort of popular fictional literature may feel a unconscious fulfillment whenever they read it, because it aligns with their desires, dreams, and wants, and thus, after reading it, their desires and imaginations and fantasies are fulfilled, and thus they feel an unconscious fulfillment. Third, or one of these points anyway, is cultural background. Now, Freud states that cultural background may influence the reader's or shape the reader's preference of popular literature works. And lastly, is shaping preferences. Now, readers reading any work of literature that align with their desires may help develop new ones or foster their desires even more, eventually shaping up their personal preference on what kind of works of literature they want to read. Lacanian theory, which I sum up to 4 points, which are language. Now, Lacan focused more on language of the text and the elements of the text to uncover the unconscious instead of the authors or that they are a reflection of his dreams. The other point is that the cultural traditions and works of popular literature help shape the reader's desires, needs, and wants and foster them anew. The other point is that readers are viewed as fantasizing or dreaming as they were reading uh, any book or watching any movies because they are currently in the process of fulfilling their hidden desires and dreams. And finally, the last point, and the most prevalent one, is universal desires. Lacan states that certain desires, dreams, and fantasies and imaginations are considered universal or are shared and prevalent across all mankind. This explains why popular fiction or popular literature works exists as it is, because it is used as an outlet for their existing desires and imaginations that are prevalent in all humans. The six aspects by Kaplan. The six aspects are the six aspects of psychoanalysis that must be understood fully in order for anyone to successfully apply psychoanalysis in any work of literature or literary research. The first aspect is the talking cure, which is essentially a means of analyzing any work of literature akin to a psychiatrist analyzing a patient. The second aspect is explanations. It is essentially to explain literary connections, actions, motives, and appearances in the text. The third aspect is aesthetic. Essentially, it is used in a aesthetic, structural discourse. The fourth aspect is psychoanalysis within a narrative discourse used in literary texts or movies. The fifth aspect is discourses. Psychoanalysis used as a means of historical, ideological, and cultural discourses. And finally, the sixth aspect is criticism. Psychoanalysis used by critics to view and observe the text's progress and place it in relation to its readers and observers.
Okay, conclusions. Popular fiction can be seen from two aspects, that is reader aspect and audience aspect, where it could result in some literature criticism using research methods and theories. It's according to its own function. There are three theories within literature criticism. First, reader response theory and aesthetic response theory. Second, reception theory. Third, psychoanalysis theory. Thank you.